the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky, Godzilla!
In the past few years, we've seen many projects based around Godzilla, some of which aren't even a part of the popular MonsterVerse franchise. Japan is known to have produced movies based on the monster almost every 1 or 2 years, but it seems that these movies are also seeing a lot of success. While Japan managed to get an Oscar, the first for a Godzilla movie, this year for Godzilla -1, the US is not stopping anytime soon with their MonsterVerse franchise. Fans were stupefied when the beloved monster appeared in the Apple TV Plus show Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, but even though this wasn't the case back in the early days, we did get to see some cartoon shows based on the character. Let's look at the cartoon Godzilla from 1978, which may have influenced the wide range of characters appearing in the 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters film. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Exploring the Godzilla 1978 animated series. Godzilla was created as part of the Godzilla Power Hour, which aired on NBC in a package that included a variety of other cartoons. The primary 2 shows included Godzilla and Jana of the Jungle. Later, shows like Johnny Quest, Globetrotter Adventure Hour, Dino-Mutt Hour, and Hong Kong Phooey Hour would be added to this pack. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, the cartoon featured Calico's crew going on various adventures with Godzuki and Godzilla. The series first aired on September 9, 1978, and continued until 1981, when it was cancelled. This series was a co-production between Hanna-Barbera Productions, Toho, and Benedict Pictures Corporation. Even though Toho was involved in the project, the show continued to air in Japan. The basic premise of the character was the adventures of the Calico crew, accompanied by Godzuki and Godzilla. 90s kids might feel this premise very similar to a show by the same name that became quite popular. Many monsters appear in the show, and our heroes prevented them from harming humanity. The show had many unique details, including the famous Godzilla roar that was changed, and Ted Cassidy vocalized this character. Even though the show was cancelled in 1981, a comedy special episode was made in which the Y2K bug appeared as Godzilla's opponent. This was in reference to the software issue that occurred worldwide in the year 2000 and led to many computers crashing. This episode only proves the legacy of the cartoon and the wide variety of colorful monsters that Godzilla faces. Epic Adventures, delving into the episodes of the Godzilla animated series. Episode 1, The Firebird. The first episode of the series sets up the tone and the pattern that this animated series would generally follow. It opens with 2 geologists taking readings for seismic activity in one of the remote Aleutian Islands in Alaska, Pitcairn. Suddenly, the dormant volcano on that island becomes active, and the seismic pattern goes haywire as the geologists plan to escape. Still, their boat gets washed away due to the seismic activity. They manage to radio any nearby boat for their rescue, but are caught off guard when a giant Jurassic bird-like creature emerges from the volcano, completely covered in flames and roars. Fans of Godzilla might see that this creature has an uncanny resemblance to Rodan. Meanwhile, our heroes are at the sea on the Calico, with Pete playing hide-and-seek with Godzuki on the deck. Captain Carl Majors was informed of the seismic activity by First Mate Brock. A giant tidal wave approaches them, and Carl uses the Godzilla signal, resulting in Godzilla emerging from the water to rescue them. As the wave nears, Godzilla picks up the Calico in his hand, thus preventing any damage from the wave. After their rescue, the team traces the wave's origin, and comes across the distress signal from the island. Before the lava flow can cause them any harm, the crew manages to save the geologists using the hovercraft. One of the geologists claims that this volcano might have caused other such dormant volcanoes to activate too, which could be the reason behind the tidal waves worldwide. As brave heroes, Quinn and Brock decide to investigate this volcano through the tunnel that leads them right to the core. Even though they had commanded Godzuki to stay back, he followed them along with Pete. But right when the team reaches the core, the giant Firebird emerges from the lava again, and since it felt threatened by the intruders, it attacks them. As the Firebird starts following them, Carl again asks for Godzilla's help using the signal, and Godzilla shows up to face the Firebird. The two monsters begin fighting each other until the moment when Godzilla falls back and the Firebird flees toward the Arctic. As they observe the situation, the geologists suggest that the monster will lay eggs. The team reaches the Arctic along with Godzilla as the two monsters continue their fight, but when Godzuki intervenes, they both fall into the waters, and the Firebird flees into one of the underwater caves. Godzilla traps the monster with boulders, which is how the matter is resolved. Godzuki faces punishment for his behavior and is made to be carried on a boat pulled by the Calico. Episode 2, The Earth Eater. A similar scenario is followed in the next episode as a crisis strikes the world again. An earthquake hits San Francisco and creates several building collapsing fissures. Later, this activity is discovered because a giant monster is feeding on the earth underneath the city. Our heroes aren't far from this situation, as Quinn is about to give a speech at a science convention. As the team is about to disembark, they discover that the entire city is being evacuated because of the crisis. They witness a significant moment of panic as the Golden Gate Bridge gets overloaded with people trying to flee, making it destabilize slowly. Before things get much worse, Major calls for Godzilla's help, as he appears and breaks off the bridge with the people on it safely, and puts it on a nearby hill. As the team explores the city, they discover the various sinkholes caused by the monster, confirming that it wasn't an earthquake. Pete and Godzuki will land in trouble again, but this time they have fewer reasons to be blamed when they get swallowed by a sinkhole. The crew rushes to save them and discovers a massive tunnel that leads to other tunnels. The monster notices them and rushes to cover their path, but Majors uses the Jeep's headlights to scare it away. The Calico crew manages to reach the surface where the monster, now called Earth Eater by the crew, follows them. Godzuki calls Godzilla, who comes to the rescue and uses his sound waves as a weapon to make the monster retreat underground. As they look for the monster, they discover it has climbed to the top of the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, we have all seen Godzilla shoot nuclear beams through his mouth, but here, Godzilla uses a laser from his eyes, causing the bridge to collapse, and the monster falls into the water and reduces to mud. Episode 3, Attack of the Stone Creature. Many monsters appear in this show, with each beast attached to a particular attribute of the scenario. The third episode took us to Egypt, where we found two stone monsters with a rather uncharismatic design. An explorer researching for the past 20 years reaches a pyramid and discovers a giant golden circle. Right then, the two monsters who talked about attacking him have sandy and freezing cold blows. Due to plot convenience, the Calico crew is at the Nile River, swimming around until they discover the person who had gotten attacked by the monsters in the beginning. He was covered in frostbite because of the attacks made by the two monsters, and he tried to explain to them what had happened. After presenting the events, he rejected the proposal of going back to the location with the others. Even though he wanted the same, he revealed the area to them. The crew goes to the location on their minicopter, but suddenly a sandstorm appears at the site and strikes them while slowly turning into a blizzard. As it starts freezing the minicopter's rotors, they put down Godzuki. Majors asks for help from another friendly monster. Godzilla appears to save them from this mess, and then Godzuki tries to find the reason behind this blizzard. We see that the stone monsters are responsible for it, and they try to hit Godzuki with their freezing breath of air, but Godzilla saves him. Godzuki discovers the pyramid the explorer was working on, and as the crew starts digging there, the stone monsters appear again, but they don't make a move. Pete and Godzuki take a break to go and fill their bottles, only to be sucked into a whirlpool that ends up taking them inside the pyramid around which they were excavating. The duo discovers a stone door to take them out of this pyramid. Meanwhile, outside, the golden circle somehow activates and the two stone monsters return to life and attack the crew. Again, Majors turns to Godzilla for help, and Godzilla appears just in time to prevent the monsters from attacking them as they try to rescue Pete and Godzuki. But battling the two monsters turns out to be tricky for Godzilla as they keep attacking him with freezing breath, only to end up freezing him under thick ice. But Godzilla breaks free and reduces his opponents to rocks. The rest of the crew manages to get out of the pyramid safely, and Godzilla bids farewell for this time. Episode 25, Island of Doom. Now that we understand the episode's particular storylines, we can jump into episodes with exciting events. If you're a fan of G.I. Joe, you might find this next episode rather interesting, adding to the fact that we see Godzilla go against the military. This time, the Calico crew is at the coast of Australia, observing a satellite being deployed to observe weather patterns in the South Pacific. But not very far from them, an organization by the name of Cobra is targeting the satellite with a missile so that it doesn't end up discovering them. The Calico crew discovers the attack's origins and heads towards it for further investigation. At the Cobra base, we find unclear warheads being made for some evil purpose. They find out that Calico is headed toward them, and this time, they decide to release underwater mines to stop the intruders. When the Calico gets stuck in the minefield, Majors calls up Godzilla, who arrives to save them from their situation. Later, Majors and Brock sneak into the island, only to discover the vast weaponry. As they reach the nuclear reactor, they're caught by Cobra's soldiers and held captive. Majors tries to reach Godzilla but fails, since the radioactivity prevents the signal from getting through. As the leaders of Cobra decide to interrogate their intruders, they find out that the nuclear reactor has become unstable, and it might lead to a nuclear fallout on the island. Meanwhile, Pete, Quinn, and Godzuki had gone to the island to find answers regarding the disappearance of 2 crewmates. Godzuki summons Godzilla, and Cobra finds out that Godzilla is heading toward them and starts aiming all of their weapons at him. The monster survives through all of this using his eye lasers, as the weapons prove ineffective. Godzilla saves the crew from the base and then takes the nuclear reactor with him under the sea so that he can cool it down, and uses his powers to neutralize this weapon of mass destruction. Yes, we did get to witness Cobra pitted against Godzilla. Even though it was not a direct reference, fans will be able to see that they weren't very subtle about it. But the thing about this reference that will blow your mind is that Cobra didn't appear in the G.I. Joe world until 3 years after this episode. Even though this doesn't happen often in the show, this is one of the times we see Godzilla pitted against a human foe. Episode 26. The show's final episode pits the crew of the Calico and the friendly monster against extraterrestrial beings. A giant meteor lands on Earth and causes chaos globally, with animals trying to move from a specific location, giant icebergs filling up the sea, and the water level dropping excessively. The Calico crew faces a problem when the iceberg surrounds them, and they seek Godzilla's help, who comes to save their ship. Realizing that they cannot use the ship anymore, they use the mini-sub to explore the root of all these problems further. But this is when extraterrestrial beings attack them, and the crashed meteor is a spaceship. These aliens plan to hurl an asteroid, which later turns out to be their planet, to Earth, and that would cause massive devastation on the planet. The crew gets help from Godzilla, but then the aliens manage to freeze Godzilla and Godzuki. Later, they use the exhaust of the mini-sub to free the monsters and figure out a way to prevent the asteroid from its collision course to Earth and hurl it back into space. The aliens realize that their plans have been foiled and return to their spaceship to flee from Earth. As the spacecraft leaves, we see the planet and its environment returning to its natural form, as the crisis is finally averted. While you must have seen Godzilla help humans, even the latest movies depict that aspect of the character, but this cartoon episode has a moment where Godzilla smiles and then laughs. Exploring the cast and roles in the Godzilla animated series. Now that we have seen the basic structure of the episode so far, let's examine the show's central characters. Captain Carl Majors. Since we will be exploring the humans first, Carl Majors was the captain of the Calico and led his crew through adventures. While putting them into a rather tricky spot, Carl Majors manages to save them by signaling Godzilla for help. This didn't happen once in an episode, but during their adventure, they asked for the monster's assistance each time they were in trouble. Even though Captain Carl Majors is a good leader and manages to save each of his crew members and dives right into rescue or spy mode based on the requirement of the situation, we don't see him using his means after a certain point. Jeff David did the voice work for Carl Majors. Dr. Quinn Darien. There's no clear explanation regarding the character's expertise, even though she manages to be an expert in detecting the problem at hand whenever the crisis hits them. She seems to be a biologist with some expertise in geology, considering that the crew mainly faces geological issues. She has an assistant, Brock Borden, and her nephew, who's part of the crew. She's also a close friend of our next character on this list, Godzuki. Even though it doesn't happen very often, she ends up helping Godzilla when he shrinks to the size of an insect. Brenda Thompson voiced her character. Godzuki. Godzuki has to be the most innocent and friendliest of all the characters you might have witnessed in the Godzilla world. This juvenile monster travels with the crew of Calico and is close friends with Pete. He was rescued by the crew of the Calico when he was stuck in a coral reef, which was one of the reasons why Godzilla became friends with the ship's crew. Even though there's no clear indication regarding his relationship with the monster, Godzuki can sometimes summon Godzilla, but it becomes clear that to be successful, he has to be at a certain distance from the ocean. Even though he's not the best at utilizing this ability, Godzuki can fly using its dragon-like wings, and can also release a smoke ring breath. However, this ability came only because of a particular scenario in which he was exposed to the vapors from the pit of Storm Island. Based on his design, innocence, and friendliness, this character is inspired by Manila. Godzuki manages to cause chaos with his habits at times, but one cannot deny that he significantly helps the crew when required. Godzilla. Godzilla here is very different from most other depictions of the character, and that could be because it sometimes ends up being too friendly with humans. Even though we don't see his side of the story much in this cartoon, the humans seem to be taking his help without any worries, and that too quite often in a single episode. Again, there's no clear indication of his relationship with Godzuki. Still, the two share a bond where Godzilla is very caring and protective, and he's even thankful to the crew of the Calico for keeping him company. Unlike most other depictions, Godzilla here has the power to shoot lasers lasers from his eyes, and also seems to be a lot more intelligent. He solves major issues by figuring out his way around them and saving the humans. The time when he managed to stop the nuclear reactor from destroying the island is perfect evidence of that. At times, the enemy monster might seem to be a formidable enemy with its powers, but Godzilla manages to defeat them with ease. He doesn't kill or destroy all his enemies, thus finding other intelligent solutions for dealing with them, making sure they can't cause any harm to humans. Analyzing the reviews of the Godzilla animated series. After listening to the setting of this show, people might wonder how stupid it sounds, but there's a lot more to explore in the show. It explored a lot of exciting issues across the world, since Calico somehow managed to reach these places conveniently. It follows a typical Hanna-Barbera format, with the heroic monsters looking likable. Godzuki looks like he could be in the Flintstones. Many fans have compared this comparatively tiny and friendly monster to the likes of Jar Jar Binks, but then this was because the character wasn't given much to explore, and it ended up being a goofy addition. Other than that, Calico was quite resourceful, as they managed to pop up almost anywhere worldwide by chance when catastrophe struck there. The ship had a lot of additional things that made it easy for the crew to go on their adventures, including a mini submarine, a hovercraft, and even a mini helicopter. In recent years, Japan has tried to make Godzilla an enemy. This was what we saw in the 1998 film too, but that wasn't the case for this monster, as his original depiction showed him to be friendly and a savior, much like the version that we saw in Universal's MonsterVerse projects. Fans of the monster might wonder about the laser eyes, but it was later discovered that they were added because of broadcast standards and practices, since they had always been very skittish about showing certain kinds of elements in children's cartoons. But this show had to remove a lot of aspects, considering it featured some of the most brutal monsters in the history of Godzilla characters. It might prove to be a cheesy show, considering there wasn't a massive difference in the basic structure of the individual episodes. Even then, we sometimes witness some of the craziest battle sequences, with each monster having exciting powers, and it's not every day that we get to see Godzilla attack the Cobra base. Later, we would get another animated series for Godzilla in 1998, following the failed depiction of the monster in the 1998 film. This show had a similar premise, as we saw Godzilla and the team, Heat, go around the world to battle other monsters and even extraterrestrial characters. Marvelous verdict. At a time when we have a live-action show featuring Godzilla and other monsters, this may be a cheesy cartoon. However, the fact that this cartoon managed to address many issues worldwide with its premise has to be appreciated, and it can be considered quite educational. Each monster was somehow mutated and had powers relevant to its location, and adhering to its survival tactics. Also, this show proves how many characters can be put up against Godzilla. Now that Godzilla -1 has become the first Godzilla film to win an Academy Award, the variety of projects based on this monster over the years has proven worthy. With this success, it won't be surprising to see our friendly monster make another appearance in a show. It can be based on the MonsterVerse only, and use the format of the 1978 version. Only this time, we expect it to be much more creative in exploring the world with its wide variety of detail and exciting developments regarding the other monsters. The legacy of Godzilla isn't going down anytime soon. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.